Welcome everyone to this video. I'm here in Shenzhen City at my host from Couchsurfing, and he's so kind and let me take this video here. And I first show you, like, I'm in the very far west side of Shenzhen in the Bao'an area, and this area here is bordering to the sea, which you can see also behind there out of the Xiaoju district we are living in here. Yeah, Xiaoju, as I mentioned in other videos already, is like a living housing complex in China. And yeah, my host is sitting here working very hard. And yeah, I will now sit here and record this video. And I'm gonna explain you further the Shenzhen Miracle. If you haven't watched my first video about the Shenzhen Miracle, where I was walking around Shenzhen and explaining you and giving you more information about Shenzhen and its steps towards its success, now you can check out the first video I made. And yeah, everything I'm saying is basically based on this book here, Shenzhen奇迹, from Zhang Jun, published 2019. And I would say now I want to make this video more structured. The first video I was just putting in information here and there, but now I will go from the history to nowadays economy, and after this, like, in especially like what Shenzhen is like famous for its science and technology. So before we're going to the history of Shenzhen and its special economic zone, I will start with a short location, and I will now show you on the map where Shenzhen is located. So Shenzhen is in the southeast of China, in the Guangdong province, and after Guangzhou it's the second biggest city in Guangdong province. So let's start from 1978. I think that's a good time to start with the history section of this video. So from 1978, after Mao Zedong's death and after the finish line of pure socialism in China, there was Deng Xiaoping and the new reform area, starting with the policy of Menhu Kaifang, which basically means open door policy. And during this time, the first idea came up to create special economic zones. These were 4 special economic zones, and these special economic zones, they should attract like foreign capital, foreign knowledge, foreign technology, foreign management knowledge. Then finally the Shenzhen Jingji Techu was established in 1980, and it was established by also putting a wired fence within the city to mark the special economic zone. So this wired fence was 90 kilometers long, and it was basically built to tell the people, or to explain the people, that inside this area there are special rules, and to make them clear about this rules. So this wired fence was like, I think, 3 meters and even higher high. There were like several gates and a lot of guarding posts to protect this area. Then inside this area there were many special regulations, such as lower taxes or almost free taxes, freer taxation. Changing the whole system inside China from becoming like a planned economy towards market-based economy, or now in Shenzhen like a very few new zone, at a place where new policies can be experiments, though they had to be changed a lot. So the author of the Shenzhen奇迹also states exactly what had to be changed, and this were, for instance, new investment regulations, who can invest in what, and who can borrow money to investors, and so on. And then the foreign exchange control system had to be changed, and huge land management reform had to be made. Who owns the land? Who has what rights on the land? Then there had to be established a labor market before the opening up of China. there was always this iron rice bowl, so that everyone had a guaranteed job employment, and there were also like no floating wages. The wages were set, though also this had to be changed. Yeah, so a new floating income system had to be established. And even further, because in communism, like big companies were basically owned by the state, so also the separation between companies and government had to be done. This creation of the special economic zone costed China, Shenzhen, a lot of money. So they tried to divide these costs equally by the state, by the Guangdong province, and China as a state. As I explained in the other videos, after the creation of the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone in the first years, it didn't develop as quickly as assumed. But then after 1983, it has passed its division line, and from there on it was like crazy increasingly. So 1983, I will give you an example by stating the average purchasing power of a Shenzhen citizen, or in Chinese it's the Shenzhen Shi the Renjun Shi Hui Gou Mai Li, and this was in Shenzhen 4,170 yuan, while it was in Shanghai less than 1,000, only 912 yuan, when Beijing also 896 yuan, or in Guangzhou 504 yuan. So you can see this purchasing power of a person in Shenzhen was much higher. As it is with most projects, at the beginning of a project you also need a lot of investment. You need some money which you can invest or like to build your foundation. And this was also quite big in here in Shenzhen. So in 1988, to give you an example, the total investment in Shenzhen was 87 E, 87 E, and 1 E in Chinese is 100 million. So this would be then 8,700,000,000 was the total investment sum in 1988. And from this 8,700,000,000, there was only 170 million coming from Hong Kong and Macau, and the rest, and the other 70 the other 7 billion were coming from the state, basically, so from different ministries and commissions from the central part of the government. Now let's come to the land reform, which I just mentioned, which had to be done in Shenzhen. And in China, before the new regulation, it was always the status that, I quote in Chinese, 土地使用全不能传让. So the usage of land cannot be transferred to other people. And then after the new land reform, basically in 1987, it was that 土地使用权可以由厂出让、转让、抵押. So with pay, so with a compensation, the land usage can be sold and can also be transferred or can be mortgaged. And then 1987, it came to the first land auction in Shenzhen, to the first 土地使用权拍卖. So 拍卖 means land auction, basically. And one land usage right of land in Shenzhen was for 50 years. So you could use this land for 50 years. In Chinese, 使用期限50年的土地. This is all quoted out of the book. Then, and I said that, as I said earlier in the last video about Shenzhen, in the 1980s, Shenzhen had this rapid growth phase, this extreme boom. So there were years where Shenzhen experienced growth increase in GDP from year to year, like an annual GDP growth up to 80%. So that's led to that also many things were hard to control, as in 1999 year there were created 100,000 buildings, 100,000 buildings of like private created buildings of apartments which were illegal, which are like not really like allowed to build, but no one like was looking at it so clearly. And yeah, these buildings then also had like a bad quality, which also brings me to the next topic. Then also from the early 2000s in Shenzhen, they started this Zaijian, so this resettling of residents and building new buildings in whole China, in whole Shenzhen area. And in this stage, this policy was called 整体改改, so it means total cut off, total total destruction of one building and change this place. Yes. Until the early 2000s, Shenzhen was always seen as the production plant for cheap things or only for hardware and stuff. And basically, you could summarize it as the slogan here: 前店后厂, 香港是店, Shenzhen是厂. So basically, that the Xianggang is the store where you can buy and let things design and do the management and all the services. And behind Ho at the Chang, it was Shenzhen, where it only got created, only got manufactured. But now it changed, and yeah, 现在改变, it means like now changed. Shenzhen Zongbu Yanfa, which means that Shenzhen now is has many headquarters of return and development places. And Dongguan and Huizhou, these are like two smaller towns, districts behind Shenzhen city, where now is basically the manufacturing center. So it says 周边城市生产制造, so where the products are getting created. So yes, there were 4 special economic zones, but why Shenzhen only developed so successful, and the other special economic zones such as Shantou, Zhuhai, or Xiamen were like so far back? And there's an interesting sentence in this book, and it says that 在本地人口较少、外来人口较多的地方，居住的成效更好一些. So it means that at places where you have a local population, which is a little bit less, or like where there are not so many local people, but a lot of new people come into the city, they are probably more successful. I think this is a quite reasonable statement, because the new people coming in, they are there for change, they are there for new life, and they have probably more drive than people who are already there and yes, just living at the same. So this was basically our history part, and now we come to the nowadays Shenzhen. And first of all, I want to give you an economic comparison to the other big cities in China. So first of all, Shenzhen is now one of the Yixian Shengzhi, so one of the first tier cities in China, which are Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou. And as in the picture I'm showing you here now, you can see the GDP comparison between Beijing, this is the first one in the list here, then Shanghai is the second one, and Shenzhen is here already at the third place of the Zhongguo, der chinesischen GDP Skala. And as you can see, the GDP increase, the Zhengsu, is here at almost the highest, is at 9%, so higher than Beijing and Shanghai. Now, okay, Tianjin is next to Beijing, has also a 9% rate, and Chongqing actually has 10.5%. But yeah, let's not focus on this city. Let's stay at Shenzhen, where you can see the Mei Pingfang Gongli GDP. So it means that each square kilometer, the GDP is here also extremely high, because Shenzhen city, as I also explained in the earlier video, is in a quite small area, like because it's has its the sea on the in the south side and the north with quite few hilly terrain. So it has this 9.766, while Beijing is like an extremely large city and only has 1.517. Okay, let's stay at this table for a moment. And actually, as we can see, the Guangzhou GDP is a little bit higher than that of Shenzhen. But in Shenzhen, the Caizheng Shouru, so the Shenzhen revenue, so the revenue the city makes is much higher than in Guangzhou. So it is the twice as much, 2倍左右, so almost twice as much than in Guangzhou. So I would say let's stay at the GDP for a moment in Shenzhen. And almost 40% of the GDP in Shenzhen is still produced through the DR Chanye's, through manufacturing industry. And then 60.46% is through the San Chanye, so through the service industry. And now, very interesting, let's compare Beijing and Guangzhou and Shanghai again with Shenzhen. So this housing situation in Shenzhen is now also, the price of housing is also getting higher because there are more and more people per square meter. And now to compare like the size and the people and the, yeah, all this between Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou, Shenzhen, is in Shenzhen, the size of Shenzhen nowadays is 1,997 square meters, or yeah, Pingfang Gongli, and this is the size of only 12.7% of the whole size Beijing, and it's 31.5% of Shanghai, and 26 or 1/4 of the size of Guangzhou. And this leads to that you have in Shenzhen city like 每平方公里有5697人. So at each square meter in Shenzhen you have 5,997 persons, or like 5,600 persons in Beijing. This is like 4 times that of what it is in Beijing, and it is one and a half that much as in Shanghai. So the density of the population in Shenzhen is higher than in Shanghai and Beijing, like a lot higher, like 4 times that high as in Beijing. And now let's have a look at one very interesting thing, I think, which is the Renko Zhengchang Sudu. So it means the population increase. In 2016, the population increase, the net population increase, the Jingcheng Renko 达到53万. So the net population increase in 2016 obtained 53,000 people in Beijing, in Shenzhen, and this is 13 times that of in Beijing, and it is 10 times that of Shanghai. And nowadays, with so many people coming into Shenzhen is now also already the 3rd priciest city after Shanghai and Beijing for housing. So I quote, Shenzhen 房价在 Shanghai, Beijing 之后. So it's like the 排到第三. So it's at the 3rd place for housing prices. One very interesting fact I want to add here to the residents living in Shenzhen is that 11,910,000 of the residents are called Changju Renko, or permanent residents, while there's also a Huji Renko, which means registered permanent residents. And the registered permanent residents in Shenzhen are only 3,850,000. Also, as I said in the video before, in Shenzhen, the success is pretty much based on private enterprises. So in Min Yingqi, sorry. And so the total amount of companies which are private in China, in Shenzhen, are 95% of the companies in Shenzhen are private. And from these, these 95% of private enterprises, they create 80% of the job employment in Shenzhen. And they also produce 60% of the GDP in Shenzhen. And they produce 50% of the tax income to the government, to the Shuishou. And from the manufacturing industry, 90% are private or individual enterprises, such as Huawei, Zhongxin, Tencent, Wanke, oder BYD, or BYD. Now let's get more into the direction of the science, high-tech and technology here in Shenzhen City. And therefore, I want to start with bringing up this Kongque Jihua plan again, which was this Peacock plan, which was revised in 2018, where Shenzhen government wants to focus more on these things, which I'm going to tell you now: the internet, living things, new energy resources, new material, new area of IT, energy conservation, environmental protection, aerospace industry, life health, and so on. So a few more things. And therefore, the Shenzhen government also helps like new Zhuangye Zizhu, so they are giving new undertakings. They give them like subsidizes, and there is Danges Yangmu, Buchao Guo, Ibai Wan Yuan. So each undertaking should not exceed the amount of 1 million yuan. So there is a certain amount. I think it's there's a quite big amount which the Shenzhen government set into this new undertakings, and each undertaking has the capacity of 1 million yuan subsidized. And also these new startups, basically, they can get help by the government in form of Changzu Putie, so in the renting subsidize or renting allowance. So the new enterprises in Shenzhen, they get help by the government, and this is like through subsidizes and also through stock ownership. And in Shenzhen today, there is this 90% of whole China. So first of all, there is 90% of all Yanfa Jigo, so all of the R&D organizations and setups are based in Shenzhen City. Then all the employment in return and development industry in the return and development sector is based in Shenzhen, and further 90% of all investments in the R&D sector is also based in Shenzhen. And the last 90% is that all of the developed and applied patents are developed or like invented in Shenzhen City. And another fact to state like the success of Shenzhen's research and development branch is that in 2001 the Trenli, or the patents they were applied and put out in Shenzhen, was at 1,000 at 1,031, and in 2015 it went up to 40,028 ones, and this was an annual increase. So this was a yearly patent patent apply how to say, I will put it here. I cannot think of this word right now. This was an annual increase of 270% each year in new proclaimed patents, and then also the growth of exports from 2003 was increasing on top at 60%. In the year 2015, 90% of all the phone brands on the world were produced and designed in Hong Kong. And so we're basically coming from Hong Kong. And that 80% of all smartphones were produced in Shenzhen. And all smartphones, 70% were designed and planned in Shenzhen city. So with all this, what I said is that Shenzhen basically right now has still very good chances for further development, and as the author in his book states, Shenzhen Chengwei Dongfang Guigu. So Shenzhen is becoming the East's Silicon Valley, the Silicon Valley of the East. And now, especially with the Idai Ilu, with the One Belt One Road initiative, there will be a lot of new chances for Shenzhen. And also now that Shenzhen is the first tier city, it can bring further benefits to Shenzhen city. And now also, let's say, with the further education spending which was put into Shenzhen, there's a lot of things gonna change in Shenzhen soon. So from 2010 to 2015, the education spending has increased by 105%. That's like large. I don't want to know, like, when in Germany the education spending was like it was increased by such a big amount. And then also the jobs in higher education have doubled from 2004 to 2015, and also the students in higher education have doubled from 2004 to 2015. So there's a lot of new potential for Shenzhen there. But Shenzhen also, of course, has a few problems, and as the author stated about this Wenhua Shamo, which means like cultural desert, because Shenzhen is a city with like a lot of new people moving here, and so there's basically no old Shenzhen. So there's this lack of culture in many ways, but otherwise all the people bring different culture and start their new life here, and there will be new culture created. So there's also a new chance for Shenzhen. And yeah, there's one study of the Shenzhen Human Resource Department which found out that in Shenzhen still 61% of all the interviewed companies, which were basically manufacturing and private, and yeah, they produced products for the domestic market only. They stated 61% of them stated that they have not enough skilled workers, so 缺工, like a lack of skilled workers. And with this, I think this was enough for this video. I hope you got a clearer insight into Shenzhen